If you own your own practice, and I'm talking about any practice, right? Small doctor's offices, med spas, dentist offices, small clinics, chiropractor's offices, any of the above, chances are you started this business because you were a technician, right? Michael E. Gerber in his book, The E-Myth, talks about how technicians are people who are really good at their jobs, they're really good at practicing, so they want to branch off, start their own business, and do things the way that they think they should be done. But as you've probably come to realize, when it comes to starting your own business, there's a lot more on the business side that takes away from your ability to practice. So I see a lot of folks who are either doctors or other sorts of practitioners who are in this space where they're spending more time on their business and less time doing what they love, which is practicing and helping people, healing people, all of the above. And most clinicians that I work with, most clinicians or practitioners of all shapes and sizes, they come to the same conclusion, right? They need help in the business. But then these intrusive thoughts start to circle. You start thinking, what if I delegate the wrong task? What if there are compliance issues? And can I even afford to hire someone? But even amongst all these questions, I do have some good news. There is a low-cost, simple solution that thousands of practices are already using and that you can seamlessly integrate into your business so that you can get back to being a technician, being a practitioner versus spending time running the business on the day-to-day and essentially drowning in admin and paperwork, as well as marketing, advertising, all of that stuff that takes away from you being able to do why you originally started the business. Okay, so if you took any look at our page, you've probably realized we are an outsourcing company. So the advice I'm going to give is if you are looking to outsource, right? And it doesn't even have to be with us, but in general, if this is a solution that you're considering, I'm going to give you the play-by-play of what you should do from an outsourcing perspective. And to be honest, for most clinicians, most practitioners, I usually recommend hiring 2 people. You can find that unicorn that's able to do both, but really, for the most part, this is going to be 2 separate profiles. And I know it's not an option for everyone, but we're talking about VAs that can run about $2,000 a month or less, especially on the operations side. So you're probably already hiring somebody in the business, either directly or indirectly, to do these things for you. And you're probably spending way more. So even though bringing on 2 people seems like a lot, in reality, you're probably already paying for these services and you're probably already paying a premium for these services currently. So the first person that I'm going to recommend hiring is actually going to be a social media manager. And then the second is going to be somebody who's going to be a rock star in operations. And I'm going to come back to the operations person a little bit later in this video, but for now, I'm actually going to dive into the social media / marketing manager. So what I see lots of clinics doing is that they're already outsourcing the social media, but they're outsourcing it to an agency most likely. Everything seems too complicated. They don't want to hire someone to work in the business on the day-to-day, so they outsource this to an agency. And when you're outsourcing to an agency, chances are you're probably not just buying one package from them, you're probably buying multiple packages, right? So one package might be social media management, and that's managing your Instagram, maybe a little bit of Google reviews, maybe a little bit of LinkedIn, might have some YouTube going. But for the most part, I see that social media package as being one. And at a minimum, at a very, very minimum, if they're just managing your Instagram page or they're doing a few posts a month, it's $1,000 a month. And I've even seen just for Instagram management, that number skyrocket up to $3,500 a month per practice. So it does get pricey. And then once you're in that social media package, right, you're realizing, okay, well, this really isn't enough. You also need to do some sort of ad spend, some sort of real marketing apart from social media, because they do tend to be 2 separate playing fields. And that second package is going to be SEO focused, maybe ads focused. And these can get very pricey because not only are you dealing with the price of the ads, but now you're also dealing with having a copywriter for the blog post. You're also dealing with having a percentage of the ad spend go to the agency. So that price can really tend to just skyrocket or snowball out of control. And then on top of the ads package and the social media package, you're also probably paying a separate person to do your website development. And I see this all the time with my practitioners or clinicians. They'll have somebody develop just like a beautiful website. Like the website looks awesome. And then they get 3 months, 4 months in, and they think, oh, hey, we need to update the website because whatever doctor was working in the practice is no longer with us, or, we changed our hours of operation, or we actually started charging a little bit more. And so you try to edit your website and either you don't have access to it or it's on a platform that's purposely not user-friendly. So then you have to go back to that same web designer and ask them to do a redesign. And that is an opportunity for upsell. So every time you want to change anything on the website, it ends up costing you a lot of money out of pocket. So this ends up being an opportunity, like a great opportunity for the business, and you're almost handcuffed to this website that can tend to get pretty outdated. So my best advice to clinicians is, instead of going with an agency to do all of these separate packages, hire one person who is dedicated. We're talking 40 hours a week, who's able to be in your business full time, managing your social media, managing your ads, managing your SEO, and updating the website. This is going to save you thousands of dollars in the long run, because realistically, for somebody who is like a marketing guru, marketing genius, who's going to be able to do all these things, can run you about $2,000 a month if you outsource it. Again, if you're paying an agency, that might be the cost of just one of those packages. So I highly recommend finding that rockstar abroad and having them really take ownership and manage the business. And also, I feel like there's such an intangible piece about having that quick response time. Because if you're working with an agency, they're getting around to your email when they get around to your email, right? It might take 2 to 3 business days. It might be a few hours, just really depending on the agency. But you want somebody who is able to respond to you very quickly and who's able to really work in your business with you. So if a lead comes in, if somebody asks on the Instagram, hey, are you open today? We need something right now. You're able to have that social media person looking at the account, monitoring, and responding in real time to get people to come in to your clinic, into your practice. Also, realistically, whatever agency you're working with, they're not spending full time on just your social media. They might be spending maybe a few hours a month on ads. They might be spending maybe an hour or 2 a week on doing some of the social media content, but for the most part, they have everything set up and then it's just monitoring. So if you bring somebody into the business who's able to be full-time and fully invested, they're going to be able to take a more comprehensive approach and stay on top of some of these larger things. So I guarantee you will, in general, have better results if you have somebody who's dedicated to your business. And I don't want to sound like I'm anti-agency. I absolutely think that there's a time and a place to hire an agency. And for larger practices, I actually would recommend it. If you have a practice that's doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in ad spend, hire an agency. I think that makes sense, right? You want specialists at that point. Who I'm talking to are these clinics or these practitioners who they're maybe on the cheapest package, or they're not able to upgrade to a second package, right? When they really need both. If you're able to replace that cost with somebody who's going to be permanently in your business, your ROI is going to be a lot better. And it's something I recommend really for a lot of my clinicians who are struggling, or they're even thinking, okay, maybe this is something that we do ourselves. You're not a marketer, you're a practitioner. Let yourself be a practitioner. Okay, so now let's talk about the operations side and hiring an operator. And I know that this is definitely more of a touchy subject, let's say. And I've seen a lot of clinics who still have 100% of their administrative paperwork handled by people who are in-house. And to be honest, I understand it. It makes sense. Even just a few years ago, it was quite a bit cheaper to hire and just have people that were in-house who were able to do some of this administrative paperwork. I remember I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. And I remember a lot of my girlfriends who graduated with, let's say a biology degree or chemistry degree or some other general life sciences degree. They ended up working for clinicians as a first job out of college, right? So these were college educated girls. They were excited, they were ready to do a new job. and they were getting anywhere between $13 an hour to maybe on the high end, if they're really lucky, they'd find a practice that would do 16 bucks an hour. And that was sustainable for somebody whose first job was out of college and a practice. But now in the same city I live in, I still live in Austin, I cannot find a clinician that can hire somebody for under 22, realistically 25 bucks an hour for somebody to be in the clinic. So what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of clinics who they maybe would have had 5 or 6 people on staff, and now they're at 3 to 4 people. So their staff is stretched a lot thinner than they were before. And to be honest, I really think that a lot of paperwork still does need to be done in-house. That makes sense. There's so many things, even just physically greeting guests, having them sit in the waiting room, being able to triage, I think it's very important. But I've seen that a lot of clinic staff is just stretched so thin that they're unable to catch all the balls that are in the air. If you're a chiropractor or maybe a therapist or physical therapist, it might make sense to actually have no office staff, but for the most part, for most clinicians, most practitioners, I do think it makes sense to have office staff. But if your office staff is stretched thin, it will be such a relief to have another operator who's able to take on some administrative tasks, right? It's not going to be like it was back in the day, right, where you were able to have a full staff. You're still going to have a reduced staff, but you're able to make up some of that piece by hiring somebody who's remote, who's working on the business. And if you're worried about HIPAA compliance, or if you're worried about somebody who's not physically in the office handling sensitive information, put somebody on low-level tasks, right? So these can be tasks that are calling to schedule follow-ups, calling no-shows if somebody no-shows to an appointment. And this is a really important one that I think is so underrated, even calling customers that maybe came in a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and you haven't seen since. And I actually think that this is one of those things that most clinics are not doing, right? Most clinics are not calling to follow up with people that haven't been in a while, and they're losing that revenue. So if you have somebody who's just able to go through your phone list and is able to call and schedule people who have not been in or who are missing, when they should be returning for an appointment, it's going to automatically increase your bottom line. It's going to automatically bring more money into the practice. And it's going to take a lot of stress off your staff, right? A lot of these staff members are probably overworked, overstressed, and it's going to be very nice to have somebody who's doing these little pieces, these little follow-ups, just these small things that help the business run better that are not being done on the day-to-day simply due to burnout. And just to address, kind of the elephant in the room, one thing I hear clinicians and practitioners say all the time is that they do not want their customers to feel like they're getting scam calls or spam calls, right? And I think that this is a very real thing, right? There's so many scam calls, there's so many spam calls that go out. I know I get a lot, I'm sure you do too. But I will say, I think just from a cognitive bias perspective, we 100% outsource to South America. And even just living in Texas, if I hear, somebody on the phone and they have an accent that I peg as maybe South American or from a Spanish speaking country, I assume they're in the United States, especially in Texas where we have 42% of Texas is Hispanic. I just automatically assume somebody might have English as their second language, Spanish as their first, because that is so common. And I think it's very common all over the United States. So you're still building trust, and a lot of your customers will think that this person, even though they're calling from South America, is still in your practice, is still based locally. And I think that that's one of these intangible things that holds so much weight, because the trust that somebody has in your clinic is so important. And just doing one extra small thing to build that trust, it really does go a long way. And everyone we hire as well, every single person is not only English proficient, but English fluent. We're hiring people who definitely sound like they could be based as English as even a first language. And I think that that's, again, just so important for ease of communication. And that is relatively easy to find in South America. And so I hope you've liked this video. If you're a clinician and you're finding yourself in this boat where you're not able to actually be in the practice, you're just working on the practice constantly, these are the 2 hires that I would absolutely recommend. Even if you're not looking to hire, if you just want to message us or comment below, I'm happy to talk over growth strategies. I understand it's very hard when you're running a practice and you're trying to do 50 things at once, or even if you just hired someone and you want some tips and tricks, just please feel free to drop us a comment. We're here to help. But this is personally what I think is the best strategy. We've helped a lot of clinicians, and this has really been something that just automatically not only takes time and gives it back to the clinician, but it also gives a ton of time back to their staff and overall creates a happier environment, makes things run a little bit more smoothly, which is definitely a massive benefit. So that's it. My name is Paris Bland. I'm the founder of Digital Executive. If you have any comments, questions, please just leave them in the comments below.